Keith Clark, yesterday you presented the findings of the IC State of the Nation report on infrastructure. You chaired the panel. There was a lot of emphasis put onto the need to, make our infrastructure more resilient in the face of climate change. What do you see as a big challenge there?
There's huge challenges. I mean, first the science. You look at the Met Office, brilliant stuff. We are going to have more extreme weather events. We are going to have them more frequently. It means that the old view we had of infrastructure, of 24/7, of everything all the time, isn't going to work. Plus, infrastructure in the way we privatized it did not deal with resilience, and it certainly didn't deal with resilience of systems. And if you look at Jim Hall's work at Oxford, some stunning work there that looks at those interdependencies. So we're at the threshold of a different risk profile.
But of course, we can't afford everything we want. How will we decide what's worth investing in?
You can never afford all the infrastructure you want, and you've always built too little, too late, or too much too early. That's the very nature of infrastructure. But understanding the rationale and interdependencies of infrastructure is vital, and the beginnings of that is in the NIP work, National Infrastructure Plan work that IUK is doing. The fact that Lord Dighton exists in his role is really important. And secondly, the point we've made, actually, if you can't maintain the assets you've got, you shouldn't be building new ones. And that's kind of fundamental.
Right.
So big choices, astute choices, not based on, as Heseltine said yesterday at the State of Launch, nth degree of slide rule calculations, but based on the vision of what you want society to do. How will you adapt to climate change, and how do you mitigate our carbon profile?
Okay. But one of the, I suppose it comes down ultimately to government making decisions and getting to make those difficult decisions, but it also comes down to where the money's going to come from. You mentioned two sources of funding. We have to deal with that.
There's a huge discussion in the press about selling assets and private finance and balance sheets. Actually, if you strip away all the balance sheet and accounting nonsense, there are only two sources of funding for infrastructure. One is tax and one is user charges.
Yeah.
And the government of the day on any project has to make that decision. Implicitly, it's making it anyway, of that split. And then how you actually finance it to actually is just hire purchase.
Yeah.
With all the cleverness, it's a form of hire purchase. Future cash flow, you've mitigated to pay for it now. And most of that has been driven by an arcane view of what's on balance sheet and off balance sheet.
Right.
The reality of cash flow, which Thatcher was very good at, is pretty real. So we are going to have to live within our means to a degree. You can borrow, but in the end, recognize that users will either pay for it or some form of tax will pay for it or some split. Very important basics.
Yeah, and because the point that you did make very strongly yesterday is it is time for action, to stop thinking about it and start doing. And I suppose, how do we get the politicians who are supportive to actually go from being supportive to making the big decisions?
I think we expect government to govern. We're not asking government to be perfect. We're not asking for a planning decision process which is far more rapid. We're saying democracy is great, planning process is great, but when you've made the study, make the decision. SUDS has been sitting there not being implemented for 4 years. This is ludicrous.
Right.
Just get on and do it. And that is the role of government. Energy policy, if you go ERM, the slowness in all of this stuff is a real drag on the economy. And it's not about an ordinary pipeline for the financiers, it's about government getting on and making the decisions only government can make.
Well, yeah, it is only government that can make. Is there a role that the profession can? I mean, you talked about the profession moving from answering questions to actually trying to influence the questions.
Well, I think if you look in the Telegraph today, there's a very good piece that says you must be worried when a professional body actually says you should be building less and maintaining stuff, which is arguably against the interests of its members, but in the interest of society.
Yeah.
It's that serious. And the fact we've been engaged with a large number of departments before the report, and we'll be engaged with a large number of them after the report, and we had people like Lord Adonis and Lord Heseltine at the launch, and sadly not Lord Dayton, who had to go to Abu Dhabi, who was scheduled to come. We are engaged with saying, look, we support you to make difficult decisions. That is what's costing us money, is just the lack of moving things in a timely fashion.
So The report did show that there were still quite a lot of areas which were in need of attention, quite a lot of at risk, or there certainly was an at-risk area that was highlighted around local transport. Do you see that as being I suppose, a damning indictment of the last 4 years of coalition government, or do you look at it more positively than that?
No, it's not a damning indictment. It's a maturing question. The thing we have stressed is the previous government and this government has tried to make inroads into this in a world of scarce money. And the deepest recession and financial crisis we've seen in my lifetime and many others. You're not going to go off and do the Roosevelt do of New Deal. Okay, it's just not going to happen. There has been material improvements, but the point we're making is the question gets harder because of climate change, because of population, because of the aging population. The need to actually be competitive in a global market points these issues up. So they were important before, and what we have seen is all three parties recognise an infrastructure as an enabler, as opposed to infrastructure as job creation in its own right. But infrastructure as an enabler for the economy to be vibrant and diverse and inclusive is absolutely fundamental. So prompt decisions, removing uncertainty is in everyone's interest.
Keith, thank you very much indeed
Thanks,
for joining us.
Jason.
Thanks.
Good to see you.